Okay. The eighth issue we spoke is that the connection this week begins the 4 portions of the week that we read between, I guess you could call it the beginning of Adar and the beginning of Nisan, or between Purim and a little bit before Passover. Let's go back to a few of these issues. We talked about the 4 cardinal damages, injuries, destruction. These are connected by our sages to the exiles. And according to the Rambam Maimonides, the worst one, believe it or not, is the exile of Islam, which is the final exile. It's their exile. Now think about this. You think about, what do I have to do with these cardinal with these destructive forces? I'm a nice person. But our sages tell us an amazing thing, that every person inside of them has these 4 destructive forces within them. In fact, when God created the world, after He created the entire, the animals and the sun and the moon, etc., and the water and the ocean, He brings the animals. Why are you bringing the animals? And our sages tell us an amazing thing, that within every human being, there are all the animal kingdom within them, within all of us. We have a lion. Within all of us, there is a bear. Within all of us, there is a snake. Is that good or bad? It ain't good, and it's not bad. It depends how we use everything. But think about this. Why am I bringing this up? That these 4 cardinal forces of destruction are within us. But think about this one. When the Torah tells us about Ishmael, the founder of Islam, he tells us that he is half a wild beast and half a wild person. This is an amazing thing. A regular Jew has within them a zoo, we could say, all kinds of forces of the animal kingdom. That's true. But think about the Islam. Think about Ishmael. Their creation is already, he's a half wild beast within his creation. We haven't talked about the zoo yet. So we could understand what we see when we turn on our TVs or on our computers and we see what's going on in the world with the cruelty of the Islam world. We understand now, because they begin as a half wild animal and a half wild human being. Second point we mentioned, in this week's portion, we talk about all the types of guards. And let me tell you something. If a person is responsible for a class, you have a principal in a school. If something happens to a student, I want to know who is responsible. Who do you go to? Of course, you go to the teachers who are responsible. But for the teachers, you have the principal of the school. And I want to ask a question here. If you're a guard, if you're in the army, if you're in the police, what exactly is your job? Your job is to defend the Jewish people. Your job is to defend the Jewish people. If you're able to do that, more power to you. You have the blessings. If you're not able to defend the Jewish people, leave. Get the hell out of here. Because there's a lot of people. There's a lot of great Jews here that are scholar warriors. They are deep, intense in Torah, but they are also deep within the army. They know how to fight. They've been trained over the years. Think about this. Your job Your responsibility is to defend Jews. So I'm asking a question. How in the hell at this traffic circle that we're standing at, let me tell you a little bit of history. Most people don't remember what happened yesterday, but I'll tell you a little bit of history about where you are, folks. Because right where we are, there's blood of Jews all over this intersection here. There's blood all over the place. Right 50 feet from us, there's another bus stop. 50 feet away from here. A resident of Elon Moreh, Ilana Brook, she was waiting for a bus at 50 feet away from here. And an Arab with explosives came and blew her up. Thank God she's still around today to tell the story. Of course, she is terribly injured and she is handicapped. That was right over there. And let me tell you about another inhabitant of Elon Moreh across the street. A boy named Ariel Hershkovitz. Who the hell remembers Ariel Hershkovitz? Nobody. But there was a teenager. His name was Ariel Hershkovitz. And he was standing on the other side. And an Arab came and blew him up also. So what in the world is going on over here? A Jew is standing right over here. You don't have to be the defense minister. You don't have to do 30 years in the army to get it. There are hundreds of Jews daily that stand right here. And that hitch. Where the hell are the people that are supposed to be defending the Jews? Where the hell were they? In the middle of the afternoon, nonchalantly crossing over the street. What is going on here? Those that are head of security, those that are responsible, so-called responsible. Let me tell you another thing. We mentioned at the beginning of the class how 2 weeks ago, a family from the settlement of Shavei Shomron, 15 minutes away from here, 20 minutes away from here, they were traveling with a family and a wild Arab driver skids. It's raining. Slow down. No, not for them. By them, everything, kulo min Allah, everything is from God. We could be reckless. Everything, nothing depends on our being careful. Nothing depends on us. Whatever happens, happens. Kulo min Allah. Everything's from God. This wild animal skids around and rams into the car of the Richter family, killing 2 kids, injuring 4, the parents and other kids. Let me tell you something. Listen to this one. The people that are responsible for the roads, for the security of Jews driving here. Let me tell you this fact. The area of the Shomron is 2,800 square kilometers. 2,800 square kilometers. There are in this area 800,000 residents, Arabs and Jews. 800,000. For all these residents and for this entire area, 2,800 square kilometers, there are 12 traffic officers. Got that joke? 12. Just last week. And I could tell you a million stories. I'm just going last week. I'm driving to Jerusalem. 3 times I was almost in an accident. Arabs coming out of nowhere, passing where you're not allowed to pass on a straight line. Passing on curves. You can't see, it's a blind curve. You don't know what's flying there. Endangering everybody. This is just last week. This happens all the time. This happens all the time. Rabbi Itamar, who was murdered here, the principal of his school that he teaches, he came here to visit. Actually, he came here not to visit. He came here to pay a condolence call to the Shevach family, who the Rabbi Raziel was murdered 28 days ago. But who remembers that small incident? So Rabbi Itamar says, let me drive. Why? The principal of the school doesn't know how to drive? No, you're not from here. You don't know how to drive here. You got to be on the lookout. You got to be on the defense. You have to have your eyes, a million eyes around. Let me take over the wheel. Let's compare it. Petach Tikva, an Israeli town. It is 40 square kilometers compared to 2,800 in the Shomron. There are 250,000 inhabitants, residents in Petach Tikva. There are 14 traffic police officers in Petach Tikva. You have 2 more than in the Shomron. Who is responsible? Who is responsible? Every year, the amount of Jews that are injured, maimed, crippled for life, murdered on the roads here by the Arab wild animals. Who's responsible for this? Let them go if they're not able to do the job. Let them go home. Can you imagine this? Do you understand what is happening in this country? You have different laws for different people. You have different strokes for different folks. The peoples in Judea and Samaria. The people in Judea and Samaria. They've been left to the dogs. They've been left to the dogs. So in this week's portion, we cry out and talk about real Jewish guards. What's the law of real Jewish guards? Next, it says that we must expel the inhabitants from the Jewish land. One might say that we're talking about the 7 Canaanite nations. But listen to this. A Jewish law authority called the Sefer Yereim, Rav Eliezer of Metz, in his Jewish law book, in the commandment 316, listen to the words that he writes. On this week's portion, that they shall not dwell in your country. Listen to what he writes. God understands the inclinations of people. God understands the thoughts, the inclinations of people. And therefore, because he understands who we're dealing with here, the inhabitants, the hostilities, the hate, the education. Just a few minutes ago, we had people from Finland asking me for forgiveness for the funding of Finland that goes to the Arabs, to their hate machine. So it says here that when the Jewish people are strong, we are not allowed to live in the land of Israel. Wicked people, or people that bring us to sin in the land of Israel. And even though one might say that this is talking about only the 7 nations, and that was a long time ago, it has no application today. So the Yereim comes by and he tells us not so. He says not so, to teach us that this verse is talking about all those that are either wicked or people that are trying to cause the Jewish people to sin. All those that are wicked. Anybody believes that the land of Israel belongs to them, belongs to the Islam. Any Arab that believes it, he could be the nicest person in the world. He is a wicked person. Why? Because one of the 7 commandments of Noah is that you are not allowed to steal. And those that believe that the Jewish people are robbers and they want to take back the land of Israel, they might be the nicest people. They might sit in their houses quietly, but they're waiting for the day. They're supporting. They're encouraging. They are waiting for the revolution. They're waiting for it to change around. These are, according to Torah law, evil people. They must be expelled in this week's portion. Amazing. Just amazing. Next.
How long has this been going on?
Point number 6.
How long have you been doing this here?
A long time.
What?
Listen to this, folks. This is really an amazing piece. 200 years ago or so, there was one of the leading Hasidic Rebbes. His name was Rav Yoshua Eshel, the Rebbe of Afta. And he says an unbelievable piece. Remember this all your life. He says an amazing piece on this week's portion. It's at the end. Many people by that time have maybe fallen asleep. It's at the sixth aliyah, 6th part of the portion that we read. It says there that Moshe sacrificed animals. He took the blood and he split into 2 basins. Actually, he began the process and then an angel came by and did it precisely, half and half. Half Moses splits, half Moses spills on the altar and half he spills towards the Jewish people. There was a miracle and the blood reached all the people. What's going on over here? So the holy After Rebbe says, listen to this. And he says it, kivyachol, kivyachol. As if. In this week's portion, there is a covenant. In this week's portion between God and the Jewish people. Listen to what he says. He says, God, as if we could say it, God condensed himself, so to speak, half. And the other half is the Jewish people. And then they take the blood and they make a covenant. Why? And the Rebbe of Afta says an unbelievable Torah. He quotes the Abarvanel in his book Matzmiach Yeshuot. He says there was an ancient custom for hundreds of years that when 2 kings wanted to make a covenant, an agreement between them, they would sit down with wine. And before they drank the wine, they would make a prick in one of their fingers and put 1 drop of blood in the wine and then mix them. If you ever heard Blood Brothers?
Yeah, the Indians do that.
What?
The Indians in Canada do that. You cut your finger and he cuts his finger and then you put the 2 fingers together.
Indians. So the After Rebbe says an unbelievable thing. Is as if God, in a tremendous act of humility, he condenses, so to speak, himself half, and his other half is the Jewish people. And in this week's portion, they make a covenant, the covenant of blood. What does it mean? He asks. It means that when the kings do it, if you're attacked, it's as if I'm attacked. And if they attack you, it's as if I'm attacked. If somebody attacks the Jewish people, they are attacking the God of Israel. And if someone attacks the God of Israel, they are attacking the Jewish people. And the After Rebbe goes on and explains, that's why, folks, in this week's portion, we learn that it's always the portion of the half shekel. Why half? Why give half? So the Alter Rebbe says, why half? Because half is given by God and half is given by the Jewish people. That's the special idea in this week. That's the special time that we're dealing with. It's a special time of the year that comes around and we're saying, God, it's you and us, half and us half, that makes an entire whole. And that's why he says that the Jewish courts would sit in a half circle. Why in a half circle? Because God is the other half of the circle. When the Jewish people, when we're on the mark, when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, then we are one with God. So why am I bringing this up? For many reasons. Tremendous understanding. To get it. When we come this Purim and we give that half a shekel, understand what we're doing here. We're saying we are a half and God's the other half. Amazing. Amazing. That's a responsibility. And in this land, we are desecrating over and over and over again God's name. Our other half. Two more points before we call it a day. Hopefully we'll continue. Two more points. It says towards the end of the portion that underneath the throne of God there is a brick of sapphire. What does that mean? The Tosfot tells us in this week's portion. Listen to this closely and remember it all your life. What is this brick? A brick is something cheap, and sapphire is tremendously expensive. It's a precious rock. So he tells the following story. In the beginning of the slavery in Egypt, there was a pregnant woman and her husband that were working slave labor. And she had a miscarriage right there. And the baby, the placenta of the baby fell out and it mixed into the cement. God took the cement and the placenta and he put it under his throne to remember the pain of the Jewish people. But listen to this. Eventually, the Jewish people arrive at the sea. The Egyptians are chasing them. There's no way out. And the angels of Egypt come up to God and say, listen, why are you going to save the Jewish people and drown the Egyptians? They're both sinners. There's no advantage to either side. They're the same. And God pulls out that brick, that sapphire brick. And he says, remember what you did. Remember what your people did to the Jewish people. And he drowned the Egyptians. How long does that last for? Listen to this. We're not finished. This was continuously by God's throne until it came time where the Jewish people, because of our sins, we merited, quote unquote, in destroying the temple. When God saw that we were destroying with our actions, we were destroying our holiness, our specialness, our uniqueness. When he saw this, he took that brick sapphire, and it says in the verse that he threw it down, and he did not remember. When we look around what's happening in this country, that will be our next class. We'll talk about what's going on in Israel, how we're stepping on the Torah. We're stepping and desecrating the Torah. We're forcing, so to speak, God's hand to take these precious souls like Rabbi Itamar and Rabbi Raziel and the Lipker family, and the list goes on and on and on. And we're forcing God's hand because of all the terrible things that we are doing. I'll just give one example and we'll end with that. According to the Bureau of Central Statistics in Israel, there are 400,000 Jews that work on the Sabbath. 400,000 Jews that work on the Sabbath. There are 92,000 Jews that work only on the Sabbath. The first 400,000, okay, they work also, it could be just on the Sabbath. The 92,000, they work 7 days a week. 92,000 people, Jews in Israel, work 7 days a week. 400,000 desecrate the Sabbath. And we know one of the things that leads us to being exiled from the land of Israel is the Sabbath. So when we step on the holy Sabbath, when we understand that God is half, so to speak, and we're the other half, and we have this covenant, we have this blood covenant, when we're attacked, it's as if God is being attacked, and that's what's happening here in the land of Israel. There is an attack on the God of Israel. Next week, with God's help, we will continue.
Oh, you have this every week?
Yes, we're always out here.
Oh, really? Oh.
It's back forward.